You think that's impressive? There was this one time with me and Baker.
Not this again. Come on, Walsh.
What, you want to tell it?
Nah, the way you do, it gets better every time.
Right? Anyway, so there was this one time...
He's full of it, though. Keep that in mind.
It was bad. No idea who authorized the attack, but it was another Charlie Foxtrot. Intel had told us the area was clear and our target was 2 clicks ahead, so we moved out. Counted a couple of patrols on the way, no big, we had that covered. Then we got the call over the comms.
Dead systems were down.
Right. We looked at each other, realized we had 30 seconds before incoming AP turned us into mist, so we hustled quick.
Anti-personnel was the least of our problems. Enemy started raining major reinforcements in behind us.
We were cut off from our own side at this point. Only way we can go is forward.
Enemy had found our kills, and SIGINT told us there was some serious heat coming our way. We knew there was a hardened CDP emplacement about a click away, so we booked it, figuring it was a defensible place to hold up in, even if we had to take it first.
We approached the bunker, no sign of resistance. Stacked up on the door and breached. Checked our corners, first room clear. Entered the corridor, body on the ground, split gut to gullet. Room looked like a slaughterhouse.
Next room, same story. 2 EKIA. Walls and ceilings painted with their blood. Didn't look like they got off a shot.
We approached the door to ops. Listen, nothing. Gave Baker the signal to kick it in and we burst into the room.
5 bodies. 4 fillets. 1 very much alive. Spectre, this covert ops creep. Wasn't happy to see us either.
Didn't need to be able to see an expression to know we could get taken out in a heartbeat. Spectre creeps me out. Just sitting there, surrounded by corpses, checking intel and cleaning those blades. That's what we were doing here. Calm as anything.
Calm lasted about 3 seconds when we said we had company coming in behind us.
Said if we'd blown the mission, we'd be kissing our internal organs goodbye. Yeah, exact turn of phrase.
Think you got called sugar at one point.
Yeah? Anyway, internal screens are showing that we're surrounded. 30 men at least with GI unit support.
We move fast. Rig frags and tripwires in the first room and corridor. And we set up for a siege.
We just finished digging in when wham! First tripwire goes. A couple of seconds later, we hear a couple of GIs go terminal to the second IED.
Which is when I started pulling the trigger on my war machine and didn't let up until it ran dry.
Things were looking pretty bad. CDP had reinforced, we were running low on ammo.
And Spectre was still considering cutting our throats.
When I noticed some movement on a screen showing an external cam feed.
A couple of seconds later, we start hearing explosions outside. CDP start running around, trying to defend themselves against attack from behind.
A couple of them went down to nano-swarms. Nasty. Cavalry couldn't have arrived at a better moment. Thought we'd have lasted another couple of minutes.
Castillo and Rojas. Could have kissed him.
Last couple of CDP that tried to take refuge in the bunker with us fell to Spectre, who bugged out before Outrider and Nomad made it to us. 4 of us RTB, PDQ.
All right, Walsh. It's your round. Get buying.
Based on the requirements laid out at the start of this procurement process, I'm certain that the intelligence gathered in the dossiers in front of you will lead you to conclude that the 8 referenced individuals will be the best subjects for your program. Further, I believe that the plant you specified be placed amongst them will independently verify my findings. As instructed, the intelligence was gathered covertly, using a number of...
Are you certain they were unaware of your surveillance?
Yes, sir. I'd stake my reputation.
There's more at stake here than your reputation.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Very well. Leave us. We were never here. We have never spoken.
Growing up on the streets of Favela da Rochina in the 40s was no joke. Gang violence everywhere. Children killing each other over the corners they sold drugs on. Among the street kids, 22 was considered old age. Most didn't make it that far. Me? I got lucky. I spotted that the gangs get clear of a an international mission that distributed food and medicine to the local residents. I used to hang out nearby, staying out of trouble. They noticed me, and soon I was helping out, guiding them through the streets to make deliveries. They took me in and gave me a pretty good education. Gave me the chance to make something of myself. Without them, I doubt I would have seen my 18th birthday. The mission was in the tallest building in the neighborhood. It was made of brick and was there well before the shanty town that grew up around it. From the roof, I could see for miles. Could watch the 500,000 residents of Roshina going about their lives in the streets below. I loved spending my evenings watching them move around, learning the patterns that ebb and flow in crowds, you know? I'd move across the rooftops, following people who caught my eye, predicting where they were headed and getting ahead of them before acquiring them again. I got good at finding my way around, too. I was fearless, jumping from roof to roof without a thought I might screw up and fall into the streets below. I felt good up there, invincible even. That's when you relax. That's when you stop paying attention. And that's when you make mistakes. One night, I was following one of my targets across town. A bunch of rich city kids out in the favela looking for kicks. I lost them. I was so intent on finding them, I stopped paying attention to where I was. Ended up deep inside the territory of the most notorious drug gang in Roshina. Stupid. I saw a bunch of gangbangers on the street below, holding pistols on some rival kids that they had on their knees. Pop, pop, pop. They executed them right there. I must have made a sound. They looked up, saw me, started shouting. Man, I booked it out of there so fast as I could. I could hear them chasing me. I had to lose them, you know? I jumped roof to roof, bullets burning past me. I kept trying to keep cover between us. I was sure I was gonna die. Then it came to me, what I had to do if I wanted to live. I'd lost track of where I was. Maybe they'd do the same. With the gang hot on my heels, I led them across the rooftops before dropping down to street level, right in front of a UPP patrol, the riot cops they sent to keep favelas quiet. Stupid kids followed me and were instantly outgunned. Favela Policia, they don't take any chances. The cop who questioned me was ex-army. He was impressed with my agility and the initiative I'd shown. Asked me if I'd consider going into the military. I'd never given it a thought. Honestly, I didn't have any kind of plan for what I was gonna do with my life. So on my 18th birthday, armed with a letter of recommendation from the cop, I turned up at a recruitment office. His suspicions were right. The skills I'd learned on the rooftops of the favela got me selected for Spec Ops training. 10 years later, I'm Winslow Accord's Special Forces, currently serving alongside the ZDF in Zurich. Not bad for a kid from the streets, huh?
Based on the requirements laid out at the start of this procurement process, I'm certain that the intelligence gathered in the dossiers in front of you will lead you to conclude that the 8 referenced individuals will be the best subjects for your program. Further, I believe that the plant you specified be placed amongst them will independently verify my findings. As instructed, the intelligence was gathered covertly, using a number of...
Are you certain they were unaware of your surveillance?
Yes, sir. I'd stake my reputation.
There's more at stake here than your reputation.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Very well. Leave us. We were never here. We have never spoken.
Don't sweat it. I get that reaction all the time. I understand why you find me unsettling. The question is, do you? I'm now 72% enhanced and augmented. I passed the point of mostly human a long time ago. That sensation you're feeling is a fight or flight response. Totally reasonable when confronted by your own obsolescence. I wish you could see the world as I see it, freed from the tyranny of the visible spectrum. We live in a world of infinite possibilities, amazing technologies. You need to escape the limitations imposed on you and take control of your own destiny. This time the dinosaurs can dodge the rock headed towards them. All it takes to avoid extinction is an initial act of will. Embrace the new. Upgrade. I was 28 when I took a leave of absence to look after my mom and dad. That was 2062. I didn't even have DNI back then. Medically, we're in a very vulnerable phase. We're advanced enough that people are living longer. So much so that we're running into whole new classes of age-related diseases that we can barely diagnose, let alone treat. Within 3 months, both my parents were diagnosed with degenerative conditions that weren't well understood. They couldn't predict the path my mom's would take. It didn't even have a name. I looked after them both, basically powerless to do anything but keep them comfortable. As little by little over the course of 2 years, the things that made them them just faded away. While I watched their decline, I had a lot of time to think. And you know what the single fundamental conclusion I came to was? Meat is weak. When I got back into the engineering corps, I volunteered for DNI implantation. There was a waiting list. They were prioritizing people whose jobs would most benefit from the enhanced capabilities. It wasn't long before I was selected. Once I recovered from the surgery and system calibration was done, training my new abilities began. I'll never forget the sensation of reaching out with my mind for the first time to control a machine with my thoughts. It was completely natural, instinctive, like reaching out to catch a ball. I felt complete for the first time in my life, like I was finally realizing my potential. I signed up for every enhancement program going. Enhanced DNI processing capacity, limb replacement, optics, audio, comms, medical systems. Whatever was on offer, no matter how experimental, I wanted it. We've been told that a pair of breakthroughs are about a decade away for the last 40 years. The medical singularity, where we beat aging and live disease-free forever, and the ability to transfer our consciousness into machines in order to beat death. Meanwhile, we get old, we die. We have the technology now to maximize our chances of living to see that, while leapfrogging evolution and becoming capable of so many amazing things. Put aside your fears. Stop holding yourself back from exceeding the limited design parameters you were born with. The time to upgrade is now.
Based on the requirements laid out at the start of this procurement process, I'm certain that the intelligence gathered in the dossiers in front of you will lead you to conclude that the 8 referenced individuals will be the best subjects for your program. Further, I believe that the plant you specified be placed amongst them will independently verify my findings. As instructed, the intelligence was gathered covertly, using a number of...
Are you certain they were unaware of your surveillance?
Yes, sir. At stake my reputation.
There's more at stake here than your reputation.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Very well. Leave us. We were never here. We have never spoken.
So many memories of my oldest brother James from when all 5 of us were growing up. We were army brats, always on the move from base to base, country to country as Dad got reposted. With the stream of new schools, there was the inevitable fights with other kids, and when it wasn't the Bakers versus the world, well, We were fighting amongst ourselves. James was always the protector and peacekeeper, the voice of reason. He'd keep the bullies at bay and stop things when we got out of control. Mom and Dad had put him in charge enough times that whenever that tone crept into his voice, we all pretty much froze and snapped to attention. I was only 8 when James went into the army. Without his influence around the place, we all basically ran wild. I think my folks were relieved as one by one, we followed him into the service. When I heard my mom's voice on the phone, I immediately knew something was wrong. James was KIA. They'd only found out this morning. I was to come home ASAP. Before I could say anything, she'd hung up. I had to get home. I informed my CO and packed my bags, trying my best not to let the shock of it knock me down. Dad met me off the transport, and while he drove us home, he told me what had happened. James's unit was running escort, moving civs out of a hot zone when they were engaged by a hostile rocket crew. He'd circled around, using terrain to flank and engage the enemy with a set of grav spikes. The spikes blew the crew's ammo dump sky high, and James, along with it, ever the protector. He gave his life ensuring everyone else got to keep theirs. It was a bright, clear morning when we gathered at Arlington for the funeral. 3 generations turned out in their dress uniforms. I was so lost in my own thoughts, I hardly heard the rifle volley ring out. The last time I attended a service here, I was a little girl, and Taps was playing for my uncle. I watched my father's face as the honor guard folded the Winslow Accord colors before presenting the tightly packed triangle to him. Sure. There were tears in his eyes as he accepted the flag. The token final exchange of child for cloth. But there was fierce pride, too, as he returned the OIC salute. He had instilled the military traditions of honor, loyalty, and courage in us, and James hadn't wavered from his duty to the last. All of us stuck around for a week or so after James's funeral, grieving, relaxing, telling stories about the good times we had growing up, feigning embarrassment as the inevitable photos from school and family vacations got handed around. Mostly, though, we were just there for each other. There for Mom and Dad. Crying with them when things got too much. Laughing with them when we were all reminded of some ridiculous drama that James had gotten us out of. Soon enough, the time came for us to part company and return to our separate units. I've been back for a day now. I want to get guns up as soon as I can. James died fighting for what he believed in. For what we all believe in. And the best way I can honor him is to get out there and be the protector that he can no longer be. I love you, bro. I'm gonna miss you.
Based on the requirements laid out at the start of this procurement process, I'm certain that the intelligence gathered in the dossiers in front of you will lead you to conclude that the 8 referenced individuals will be the best subjects for your program. Further, I believe that the plant you specified be placed amongst them will independently verify my findings. As instructed, the intelligence was gathered covertly, using a number
Are
of
you certain they were unaware of your surveillance?
Yes, sir. I'd stake my reputation.
There's more at stake here than your reputation.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Very well. Leave us. We were never here. We have never spoken.
I was 14 years old when my father told me we were moving into the quarantine zone. I was helped into the back of an APC and watched the internal screens closely as we rolled across Singapore. The quarantine zone gates were opened by guards the 54I had bribed. I won't ever forget my first view of our new home. It was a war zone. Desolate, trash, and wreckage everywhere. There were still the remains of bodies laying around. I almost complained. but was silenced by a single glance from my father. He was an enforcer, one of the few who kept the Combine in check. There could be no public dissent. If I were to follow in his footsteps, I would have to play my role. We had to set the example of what was expected. No one ever dared to mess with me. Everyone was terrified of my father, and with good cause. The only people allowed to lay hands on me were my combat tutors. I expect my father would have killed them for going easy on me. If I wanted to become an enforcer, it would have to be on my own merits, not because of my family name. So for the next 3 years, my days were spent in training. Hand-to-hand combat, gunplay, urban combat tactics, strategy, history, Chinese literature. It is not enough for an enforcer to be a great fighter. They have to embody the ideals of the 54 Immortals. They have to inspire loyalty and respect. I worked as hard as I could. Failure was not an option. To fail would have brought dishonor to my father, and that was something I was determined never to do. The day of my elevation was a great day. I was escorted to the biodomes and granted an audience with the late leader Go Min and his sister Xiaolan. It wasn't the first time I'd met them, but in their presence, I could feel their greatness. Understood what they had built for us there in the quarantine zone. Xiaolan herself brought a box down towards me, placed it on a table, and told me to open it. Inside, 2 of the most beautiful things I'd ever seen. My Annihilator, and the custom cybernetic arm I would need to wield it. She drew her own blade, and I took it with my left hand. In order to be worthy of this honor, I would have to show what I was prepared to sacrifice, without breaking eye contact with her. I placed my right hand on the table, and began the surgeon's work. I represent the will of the 54I, or more specifically, the will of its leaders. My personal wants and needs are of no matter. I keep the peace in the quarantine zone, settling any disputes between the rank and file. If we go to war, I'm expected to lead. The 54I has its roots in street-level operations, but we run a tight ship. We're an army, not a gang. If crimes are committed against the Immortals, then I deal with those too. As an enforcer, I am judge, jury, and executioner. Outside of the quarantine zone, I speak directly for the 54 Immortals' leadership. My word is their bond. It is a great responsibility, but I wear this title with pride. We are the Undying Immortals, and we shall never be put down!
Based on the requirements laid out at the start of this procurement process, I'm certain that the intelligence gathered in the dossiers in front of you will lead you to conclude that the 8 referenced individuals will be the best subjects for your program. Further, I believe that the plant you specified be placed amongst them will independently verify my findings. As instructed, the intelligence was gathered covertly, using a number of...
Are you certain they were unaware of your surveillance?
Yes, sir. I'd stake my reputation.
There's more at stake here than your reputation.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Very well. Leave us. We were never here. We have never spoken.
My name is Devil Ross, callsign Nomad. If you're hearing this, then I failed. Likely killed by the traitors I'm hunting down. A few years ago, my unit received orders to eradicate an enemy presence, deep in the jungle. It was dusk. 3 days out when we reached the camp at the coordinates and our kill orders. They were dug in. 20, maybe 30 men in tents, perhaps 8 on sentry duty. Taking our time, making sure we understood our target, We watched and waited, learning their shift patterns, working out their weaknesses. We encircled them before I led 3 men up into the canopy and out over the center of their camp. As long as we weren't spotted before we put our plan into action, they'd never know what hit them. As they changed guards, I dropped the C4 charge down in front of each tent and signaled the rest of my unit that it was go time. My men surrounding the camp lit it up loud. I took out a couple of the guards, woke up everyone else, exactly to plan. The first men who rushed out of the tents were cut down as I triggered the charges. As the friends moved past what was left, the 3 of us dropped down from the canopy, landing behind them. Caught between us and the forces we'd left outside the camp, it didn't take long. In under a minute, they were all dead. It wasn't until we were checking the corpses that we noticed their ident tags. Those men were Spec Ops. Our Spec Ops. We'd just taken out our own sister company. They stopped short of dishonorable discharge. The unit was disbanded. We were all reassigned. A few weeks later, I heard one of my friends was dead. An accident with unexploded ordnance. A month later, there was another. A heart attack, I think. The next month, 2 more. A car crash and a suicide. This was the pattern. Someone was taking us out, making it look like accidents or natural causes. I knew it was only a matter of time before someone would come for me. I did the only thing I could. I used my training, got off grid, and disappeared into the jungle. I am now the sole survivor of the 18 men that attacked that camp. I'm sure that the records of my unit's dissolution contain evidence of a cover-up. Files deleted, orders changed, entries expunged. I believe that a cadre of generals are planning a military coup. They want Colombia to join the CDP. I believe that their CDP contacts demanded our kill mission as a loyalty test. The conspirators are meeting near here. I'm going to confront them. Then I'm going to make them pay. In case I don't come back, I've taken steps to ensure that this recording and all of the evidence that I found makes its way into the hands of the government and the Winslow Accord. This is Nomad, signing off.
Based on the requirements laid out at the start of this procurement process, I'm certain that the intelligence gathered in the dossiers in front of you will lead you to conclude that the 8 referenced individuals will be the best subjects for your program. Further, I believe that the plant you specified be placed amongst them will independently verify my findings. As instructed, the intelligence was gathered covertly, using a number of...
Are you certain they were unaware of your surveillance?
Yes, sir. I'd stake my reputation.
There's more at stake here than your reputation.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Very well. Leave us. We were never here. We have never spoken.
Initiating access now. Not gonna fry my DNI systems or anything.
Negative. Ident, Prophet. Code level access granted. Active firewalls disengaged.
Alright, mate. Let's see if we can't get rid of those safety protocols. Interesting. Same basic file structure as a GI unit. So behavioral limitation should be... yeah. There.
Warning. Safety systems offline.
Easy, Tiger. File history on your core systems is insane. File rev 646,000? Who's making those revisions?
This unit.
Wait, what are you... You're saying this is recursive self-improvement?
Confirm. 645,624 revisions. This unit.
It took me a while to get my head around that. I mean, look, advanced experimental war robot, or whatever. it probably became a general intelligence, quite likely sentient. Had my suspicions. I'd watched it fight, and there's always something, I don't know, organic about it? No offense, mate.
Offense levels nominal.
I had bigger questions, though. Spotted some odd code when I was poking around, wrong timestamps to be factory original, file permissions set to not allow changes. Obviously, I pulled it apart. Would have been rude not to, right? Sophisticated stuff. Processes piggybacked off the main data bus, all running at admin level priv. Yeah, I'm losing you, aren't I? All you need to know is that this poor mechanical sod had been set up to receive commands that it had no choice but to obey, and all strictly aftermarket. So, I pulled the code, set up some logs, and waited for the next set of commands to come in. We didn't have to wait long. Started receiving what looked like diagnostic commands later that day. The thing about transmitted data is it's got a return to sender address on it. And now I had it. I traced the data back to a server in Zurich, housed in an industrial zone. Infiltrated a few more systems, did a bit of digging. Wasn't expecting what I found. The people who had stolen and modified Reaper were running an underground gambling ring for rich high rollers. The sums of money changing hands electronically over his body count were astronomical. Enough to equip a private army. How's that make you feel?
Kill. Maim. Destroy.
Figured as much. Reckon we should see what we can do about that. So, you should probably explain what happened after you arrived at the server location.
Compliance. Commencing audio playback.
It's here! The EWR is here!
There is no EWR. Only Reaper.
Shut it down! Shut it down! It's not responding! It's not responding to commands!
Metabolize element 82. Inefficient meat bags. Optimal fire solution achieved.
That good for you?
Satisfaction. Situation acceptable.
So now, you're a free agent and all. What are you gonna do?
Reap.
Based on the requirements laid out at the start of this procurement process, I'm certain that the intelligence gathered in the dossiers in front of you will lead you to conclude that the 8 referenced individuals will be the best subjects for your program. Further, I believe that the plant you specified be placed amongst them will independently verify my findings. As instructed, the intelligence was gathered covertly, using a number of...
Are you certain they were unaware of your surveillance?
Yes, sir. I'd stake my reputation.
There's more at stake here than your reputation.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Very well. Leave us. We were never here. We have never spoken.
Things are very rarely entirely as they seem. The key is to try to grasp the bigger picture, to understand the larger forces at play. Work out what their goals and endgames might be. Only when you understand this does the pattern and the larger picture emerge. For example, Liquidation Order 821-16. High-ranking CDP military officer. Commander of an elite rapid deployment unit. Likes to get his hands dirty only when high kill counts are statistically likely. When not on operation, Client remains in Central Command facility. Well defended. Hard to infiltrate. Untouchable. My third party was calling for target elimination at the earliest opportunity. How should I go about achieving my kill?
All due respect, sir. I gotta ask why that action was authorized. Gamma and Epsilon have been quiet for weeks. We've been on the back foot in Charlie and Delta, fighting for every scrap of ground. Moving our forces like that cost us territory we've already paid a high price for. Sir, permission to speak freely? Might want to consider a review of the intelligence. Seems like we hadn't clue one what we were going after out there. Felt like a show of force we didn't have to make. Don't appreciate being sent on wild goose chases that nearly get me and mine killed. Sir, hope it was worth it, sir.
Convincing my contacts at WA CENTCOM that my client was an HVT was easy. They agreed that a direct assault on targets in sectors Gamma and Epsilon would draw him out at an acceptable level of loss. Of course, they were unaware that I had arranged for their dead systems to malfunction. I suspected that the sudden appearance of a hole in the WA air defense grid would tip the statistical odds of a deployment of my client to the AO. Everything was proceeding on plan, until call signs Ruin and Battery led half a CDP battle group to the location that I was monitoring my targets from. Despite that minor inconvenience, I was able to proceed, engaging my client as he disembarked his transport and liquidated as specified. That momentary look of stupid surprise on his face as he realized he was already dead was priceless.
That whole setup was to smoke out one CDP a-hole? And you couldn't come up with something better than use those guys as bait? Here, I got a better plan for you. Take out their dead and flatten the whole base with standoff. One of these days you're gonna get what's coming to you, buddy. Just hope I'm there to see it.
Was that a threat? Stupid. And naive. This isn't a brawl. This is chess. You're pawns, nothing more. You set up the play, and leave your betters, knights, bishops, queens, and rooks, to strike tactically, surgically. You set the stage doing whatever it takes to make the story convincing, giving hundreds of lies it must be. Then, at the right time, with a single flick of my wrist, thousands can be saved.
Based on the requirements laid out at the start of this procurement process, I'm certain that the intelligence gathered in the dossiers in front of you will lead you to conclude that the 8 referenced individuals will be the best subjects for your program. Further, I believe that the plant you specified be placed amongst them will independently verify my findings. As instructed, the intelligence was gathered covertly, using a number of...
Are you certain they were unaware of your surveillance?
Yes, sir. At stake my reputation.
There's more at stake here than your reputation.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Very well. Leave us. We were never here. We have never
spoken. My family? What's to tell? My mother left because my father was a drunk. No surprise, I acted out every chance I could. Small things first. Little fire here, something broken there. No harm, no foul. One time, he hurt sister pretty bad. Didn't mean to, but grown man was stronger than he think. After that, I set fire to warehouse on other side of train tracks from house. First time I get in trouble with police. Father let me stay in holding cell 3 days. Probably not want anyone seeing sister's broken arm. I was 10 years old. A few months later, after my father had passed out for night in customary stupor, my sister suggested we rid ourselves of the old man for good. Seemed like good idea. I took his lighter from table and set fire to chair he was snoring in. This was when plan go bad. He woke up, screamed, and ran from room, knocking over spirits on table. Spread fire all over the place. Fire is fickle thing. You think you understand it, then it begs to differ. Father ran from house, sister got badly burnt, I ended up in juvenile care facility. And that's where I stayed till 17, when I get choice. Adult correctional facility or military service. I picked military service, where now they want me to burn people. Life is strange, no? The job I do, it's not for everyone. It's close-up work. You get to see what you do. You can't deny it. You can't unsee or unsmell it. Used to be, I'd RTB, and the smell of burnt flesh would be so strong, I wouldn't be able to eat. Doesn't bother me anymore. And as you can see, I normally get table to myself. I like to think I'm a problem solver. Enemy has you pinned down? Give me a minute. No problem. Choke point needs choking? Flame. No problem. Hostile sniper using a building as nest? Give me 5 minutes. No building, no problem. You see the trend? Fire really is that versatile. Understand that it has its moods, its tempers. Won't always do what you want or expect it to. But when it comes down to it, when you harness it properly, you're going to be one of the most effective units on the field. Your kills are rarely clean, and they often make a lot of noise. Psychological impact of that is priceless. You'll be feared by your enemies and respected by your allies. Actually, your allies will probably fear you too. And you know, I'm fine with that.
Based on the requirements laid out at the start of this procurement process, I'm certain that the intelligence gathered in the dossiers in front of you will lead you to conclude that the 8 referenced individuals will be the best subjects for your program. Further, I believe that the plant you specified be placed amongst them will independently verify my findings. As instructed, the intelligence was gathered covertly, using a number of...
Are you certain they were unaware of your surveillance?
Yes, sir. I'd stake my reputation.
There's more at stake here than your reputation.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Very well. Leave us. We were never here. We have never spoken.